This podcast represents a brief history of the law relating to the issues raised. This should not be relied on as a substitute for professional advice. Specific legal advice should always be sought in relation to any particular circumstances, and no liability will be accepted for any losses incurred as a result of reliance on this podcast by those relying solely on this podcast. Welcome now to Hicksons Health Hour, the podcast series that explores a variety of current legal health topics. Throughout each episode, hear from different members of our health team with expertise in the area.
Recently, we have seen the rising profile of nicotine pouches in Australia, particularly the promotion of nicotine pouches as an aid to support smoking or vaping cessation. These little products are making waves in the world of smoking alternatives, touted by some as a cleaner, smokeless option to traditional tobacco products, and scrutinised by others for their role in nicotine consumption. Because nicotine pouches are relatively new, the short and long-term health consequences of using them are unclear. And while some suggest that they may not be as harmful as cigarettes and vaping because they do not contain tobacco, there are other concerns, including nicotine's effects on cardiovascular and oral health. Here to discuss this topic that has been recently sparking curiosity and controversy is Taylor Johnstone, a solicitor on our health team here at Hicksons. Welcome, Taylor.
Thanks, Meesha.
Okay, nicotine pouches. What exactly are they?
Nicotine pouches are a smokeless oral nicotine product that you put in your mouth between the lips and the gums. The nicotine is absorbed through the mouth into the bloodstream, and unlike cigarettes, they do not contain any tobacco. They sort of look like a little white tea bag or sugar sachet, and they're sold in small can-like containers which typically have 1 to 20 pouches. They're also known as Zyn, Velo, and Ziz, and like vapes, they come in a variety of flavours and are sold in brightly coloured packaging. Pricing can vary significantly due to the illegal status, which I'll explain shortly, and depending on whether they're sourced online or through a retailer, reports indicate that a can of 20 pouches can cost nearly $50. Nicotine pouches only entered into Australian market in late 2023, so they're still relatively new. However, their popularity is growing, and the Australian government has started to take notice, particularly regarding concerns about their illegal promotion as smoking cessation aids, despite the quality, safety, and effectiveness of these products that has not properly been evaluated.
So who is the target demographic for nicotine pouches?
Nicotine pouches have been heavily promoted to young people, particularly through Australian influencers on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. While there's limited research on their use in Australia, a recent study from the University of Melbourne found that nearly out of 16,000 participants aged 16 to 39, about a quarter had tried nicotine pouches, and 77% were aware of the product. This indicates that the target demographic is clearly younger adults who are exposed to these products through social media as well as through their peers.
So what is it about nicotine pouches that intrigues the younger demographic?
Their discreet use and variety of flavours make them attractive. Also, with the recent changes in vape laws, with vapes now legally only available for purchase by those over 18 at pharmacies, with ID required, nicotine pouches have become an appealing alternative. And while despite being illegal in Australia, nicotine pouches are still easily accessible online or at tobacconists.
So with the rise in popularity of nicotine pouches, what are the health risks associated with their use?
Addiction to nicotine pouches is a significant public health issue, particularly among young people. However, the health risks are still not fully understood as research on these products is still in its early stages. With that said, users report short-term health effects, including mouth lesions, upset stomach, and nausea. The long-term effects remain unknown, but early research suggests prolonged and regular use increases the risk of local oral health problems. Additionally, independent testing has shown that nicotine pouches contain hazardous substances, some of which are classified as possibly carcinogenic. More generally, nicotine is a dangerous and highly addictive chemical. Long-term use increases your risk of heart attack, alters brain chemistry leading to poor impulse control. It worsens mental health and is considered a gateway drug because its prime it primes the brain's reward system, potentially increasing the likelihood of using other addictive substances.
Okay, so bearing all that in mind, are nicotine pouches legal in Australia?
So the short answer is no. No nicotine pouches have been evaluated by the Therapeutic Goods Administration for quality, safety, or efficacy in Australia, meaning that they're not included on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. This means that under Australian law, it is illegal for nicotine pouches to be commercially sold, imported, or advertised as nicotine pouches are therapeutic goods. Therefore, it's unlawful for retailers like tobacconists and convenience stores to sell nicotine pouches. Despite this, just like vapes, they're regularly illegally sold from these retailers. And further, nicotine is a Schedule 7 poison under the Medicines, Poisons and Therapeutic Goods Act 2022, and a person must not possess a Schedule 7 substance for domestic use.
So sales are increasing rapidly, especially among young people. What sort of regulations are in place to mitigate the potential health risks you've just spoken about?
Tobacco companies have a long history of adapting their products or launching new product categories in the face of growing regulations. The rise of nicotine pouches appears to be another example of this pattern. The first thing needed to guide effective public health responses is evidence. Right now, there's a major gap in research on nicotine pouches here in Australia. The association of nicotine pouches with various activities indicates the need for ongoing research to understand their appeal and patterns of use among youth. This data can inform the development of more tailored interventions and prevent the spread of a new class of addictive, recreational nicotine products in our communities. From the limited information available, it appears young Australians see nicotine pouches as a vaping cessation aid, a party drug, and to help with sporting performance as it wakes you up. This information reveals campaigns will need to address these misconceptions and highlight that although smokeless nicotine alternatives do not carry the same health risks, such as lung cancer, they still have their own health risks. It's not necessarily that we need more laws. The law is already clear that it is illegal, but perhaps it's more enforcement we need, just like we have recently seen with vapes. There's a unique and timely opportunity to gather evidence on nicotine pouches to inform policy approaches now, prior to a potential spike in use as seen with vaping amongst young Australians in recent years.
So with the changing attitude towards vaping and the rise of nicotine pouches, particularly among young people, what you are saying is the situation requires close monitoring.
So it's crucial to closely monitor the attitudes and perceptions that adolescents and young adults have towards nicotine pouches, as this could help detect and prevent use before it becomes widespread. The rise of nicotine pouches has the potential to become a national public health crisis, much like the rapid rise in vapes or vape use amongst the same demographic from 2016 to 2023. With the recent reforms in 2024, many vape users are switching to nicotine pouches, and some even see them as a cessation aid, despite the lack of evidence supporting their effectiveness for that purpose. This shift highlights the need for careful monitoring and regulation.
It seems like nicotine dependence is a significant public health issue, especially among non-smoking young people. Hopefully, targeted future research on nicotine pouches will prevent further nicotine dependence. Thanks for your insights, Taylor, and thank you to our listeners for joining us on Hicksons Health Hour. Stay tuned for our next episode where we continue exploring the intricate interplay between medicine, law, and society.